Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Cafecito with Mr. Miami Real Estate. I'm here with Adrian and I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
My name is Adrian Irias. I'm a partner at Garcia Manical, Irias and Pastore. I'm in charge of the real estate division there.
Perfect. So today we're going to be covering escrow deposit, and a lot of buyers get concerned of what that deposit means, what's going to happen to it, is it stuck there, is it non-refundable? So we're going to cover all of those topics today. So let's get right into it. First question is, what is an earnest money escrow deposit?
Well, both of the terms are interchangeable.
Perfect.
Essentially what it says, it's a security for meeting an obligation. So in this instance, in the context of a purchase and sale, what a buyer is saying is, I will put X amount of money down as security that I will close on X day.
Perfect. And why exactly is it that this earnest money or escrow deposit is necessary?
Well, it's necessary in practice. It just shows a good faith that a buyer is going to end up closing at some point because money's on the line for him.
Perfect. So this is a question that I get asked all the time, and I'm going to go ahead and answer it myself, is how much money should I make or how much money should I put as an earnest money deposit? And that really is a question that varies, but obviously the seller is going to be happy with the more the better. Typically, if you're doing a low down payment loan, you might put down 1.5% to 2.5%, but definitely, again, the more the better. So let's jump into the next one, which is when the buyer makes that deposit, is it non-refundable?
This is a multifaceted question. There's a lot of contingencies, so you could potentially get your money back. It depends at what stage or what event has been triggered, so to speak.
Perfect.
So one of the ways that you can get your escrow deposit back is during what's known as the due diligence period.
Mm-hmm.
And the Florida bar contracts, which are the standardized contracts that they use in most real estate transactions for residences, it says that there's a standard 15-day period or less or more, depending on how you negotiate it,
Right.
to inspect the property and determine whether it is to your liking. If at any time within that time period you elect, for whatever reason, not to go ahead with the contract, you can terminate under that clause and step away from the contract and, pursuant to the contract, receive your escrow deposit back. That's just one of the ways that you can get the escrow back.
Which is actually going into our next question, which essentially that is a contingency of the
Correct.
contract. So can you just explain really quickly what a contingency is, what that means?
Contingency is essentially an event that has to occur
Mm-hmm.
for something else to happen.
Perfect.
Okay. So in this instance, if as we stated before, the due diligence period being one of them, another contingency can be the loan commitment,
Okay.
which is when your bank steps in and says, I commit to lending the money to you. So this contingency, what happens is that if you don't receive your loan commitment during a time period and this event occurs,
Mm-hmm.
then you can back out of the contract and similarly receive your escrow deposit back.
Perfect. And I know that there's a couple more common contingencies, such as title. So what is a title contingency?
Well, there's a lot of confusion here with when first-time home buyers and when it comes to inspections,
Mhm.
right? There's two types of inspections. There's the physical inspection and there's a title inspection. Physical is what you can see and touch,
Right.
okay? The title inspection is more determining whether or not there's any third-party interests that are affecting the property,
Okay.
okay? And if done correctly, because it is time sensitive, once a title commitment is received, which is a document that is provided to you by a title agent in
Mhm.
order to ensure title, it'll have a series of issues or requirements that need to be met. And in those requirements, there could be some defects in title that need to be corrected.
Okay.
Okay. If you inform the seller timely of those issues and they cannot fix those issues, then that is another contingency that can be triggered in order to receive your escrow deposit back. But that is a very sensitive, it's all fact-based, when the commitment is received, when you're informed the seller.
Correct.
So,
And that's one of the reasons why everybody who, goes out and buys a home, that's another reason why they should have professional representation.
Correct.
Perfect. And then I know that there's one more common contingency, which is the appraisal contingency.
Correct.
Yeah, so basically just for that one, I can take that one. We deal with it all the time, which is if the value of the home is not there, obviously you have a right to negotiate. If it does not happen and you cannot meet an agreement with the seller, you're allowed to back away essentially and still receive your deposit back.
Correct.
Perfect. So these are the most common contingencies. If there's a unique situation, can other contingencies be added? Is that something that an attorney can draft up? For example, if someone is in a very specific situation.
Yeah, of course. I think it's something that's usually included in Section 20 of the Florida Bar contracts.
Mm-hmm.
An example would be, let's say, if you have a tenant in the property that you're selling, and one of the contingencies is we need the tenant to move out by a certain date,
Mm-hmm.
right? If that person does not move out by a certain date, then the buyer can say, he didn't move out, I'm backing out of this deal. I want my escrow deposit back. But then again, that's always something that you have to negotiate, and depends on the circumstances of the transaction. But that's an example of a unique contingency that can be created.
Perfect. So now we've gone through contingencies and how buyers are protected, so on and so on. So if all of these things protect the buyer, how exactly is it that the buyer can lose their deposit?
Well, the most obvious one is not closing. Okay. And by having not closed, they never exercised any of their contingent rights.
Okay.
So they didn't exercise their due diligence termination right. They didn't exercise their loan commitment termination rights.
Mm-hmm.
They essentially just sat and waited.
Right.
And day of closing came up and nothing happened. That's the most common way that a security deposit could be lost.
Perfect. And basically that's why time is of the essence in these contracts.
Certainly.
Perfect. Okay. So the last one today, and this is actually something that, they ask, what happens when the buyer and seller are not on the same page as to what should happen with deposit or who is entitled to it?
So this is the responsibility more of the escrow agent, which is the individual that holds the escrow during the transaction process. If there's ever a dispute as to whom the escrow belongs, the escrow agent has, depending on the contract, two avenues. Avenue one is to retain the escrow until both parties come to an agreement.
Okay.
And the second one is to place the escrow in interpleader with the court. Essentially, what they're saying is, this money doesn't belong to me. There's two people that claim that have an interest in this money. I will place it in the court, and the court is going to resolve this issue.
Perfect.
And in that scenario, it becomes a little bit more complicated for parties because if you're dealing with the court system, it means you're going to hire attorneys. You're going to have to dispute all of this. Someone's going to end up losing, and if they end up losing, provided the contract provides for it, they may have to end up paying attorney's fees as well. So it's a sensitive matter once you start getting into litigation.
Okay, perfect. And I think that basically covers all the questions we had today. A few of those were actually from our subscribers, so thank you so much, guys, for submitting the questions and joining us for another episode of Cafecito with Mr. Miami Real Estate. Be sure to subscribe.